In this video, we're going to try and get the user selected address, and then we're going to get the distance and duration of the journey using Google's distance metrics API. And from the information we're getting from the API, we're going to estimate the journey's fare. This is the endpoint we are going to use to get that information. So it returns JSON data. The API also accepts origins and destinations in the form of place names. But in our case, we're going to be using coordinates. So the endpoint will look like this. We will provide the place names like this. But in our case, we're going to be using coordinates. And you also need to have an API key enabled, because you're gonna need to put your API key here. So if you haven't done so, please do that. And you also need to go to Google's developers console and make sure you have enabled Google Metrics API. So the object which will be returned will look like this. The only thing we're gonna need from this object is the duration value and the distance value. These are the things we're going to use to calculate the fare. So the fare calculation will basically look like this. We have base fare plus time rate plus distance rate times the charge. I have created a function already to calculate this, so I'm just going to copy and paste it. So let's start coding. I'm going to write a function to get the selected address. To do this, we're going to go inside our home route. Inside modules, I'm going to create an action called get selected address. And I'm going to come down here and just create an action. I'm just gonna comment out this get selected address, and I'm gonna export function. I'm gonna call this get selected address. And we are going to return dispatch store. This is an arrow function, and inside here we're going to use React Native Google Places. It is a function called look place by ID. And we're going to pass a payload to this function. So the payload, we're going to bind this payload when the user clicks on the address. So it will return a promise. So with this promise, we have the result. And once again, we're just going to do normal Redux stuff. We're going to dispatch type. The type will be get selected address, and the payload. And then we're just going to catch the error. Let's just handle the error here. Okay, so now we need to create a handler for this function. I'm just gonna go down here and create a handler. Our handler will look exactly like this. So I'm just gonna copy and paste this. This one will be called handle get selected address. And I'll have an object called selected address. Inside selected address, I need to have another object which tells me which address has been selected. Is it pickup or is it drop off? So to do this, I'm just going to define a variable here called selected title. So this title will depend on state dot result types. You remember from the previous video we have result types depending on what you are typing, which input box you are typing in. If we come back here, let me just clear this. If I click on pickup, toggle search results, you can see I have an object called result types which tells me this is drop off or it's pickup. So using result types, I'll determine the name of the key that I want to use here. So this will be state.result types dot pickup. So if the result type is pickup, my title will be selected pickup. Otherwise, it will be selected drop off. Okay. So in order for me to use this title, I'm just going to pass it here like this. And I'm going to set the action.payload. So now we need to map this to our action. Just gonna paste this here. Copy get selected address action and paste it here. And I also need to define this inside my action constant, so I'm just going to paste this here also. Save. Now the next thing we want to do is export this action that we just created, because we need our components to know that this action exists. So we're just going to pass it inside the containers like this. So now inside our search results component, I need to create a function called handle selected address. Selected address. Inside this function, I'm going to paste this function that we just created in our store. And this is where we're going to pass in the place ID. And where is this place ID coming from? It will be coming from here. So we have our list item here. We need to add an event listener called onPress. So when our user presses on this list, we're going to call this function. We're going to call this function, and we are going to pass the item dot place ID. Now we just need to pass this through props inside our home component here. Say this dot props dot get selected address, and I'm also going to pass it inside our map container. Just going to paste it here. Then I'll pass it also to our search results component. Is equals to this, and I'll save. So let's just check if everything is okay. If we go back to our home module, we need to initialize the state of the selected address object as empty. So I'm just going to copy and paste it here. This should be lookup place by ID, okay? Oh, we need to return the results instead of the payload. We're returning the results. So our payload will be results. And I'll save this. So now let's test. Come here, we refresh our app. Let's open the console. So I type in an address. They click on this. I get selected an address. I check this. My payload is the selected address. So now, as you can see, we now have the latitude and the longitude. So now we want to pass our results to the Google distance matrix. To do that, I'm just going to use our promise here again. We have a then here. So this is to get the distance and the time. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to check if I have the selected pickup and selected drop-off object. So I need to check if I have this object first. Inside selected address, if I have selected pickup and I also have selected drop-off. So to do that, I'm going to access my store dot home dot selected address dot selected pickup, and if I have the selected drop-off also. If this is true, then I'll make an API call to request .get. We're going to use our endpoint here. And it will have these parameters. So write query We have origins. My origins will be this. Selected pickup dot latitude. We're taking the latitude from here. And for our destinations, we'll do the same. Destinations. This will be selected drop off latitude. But we need to add one more thing here. You need to add your longitude also after this. So it will look like this. Longitude. And we'll do the same thing down here. The drop off. And we need to tell Google Metrics the mode we are using, walking or driving. So we're driving. And you need to pass your API key. In my case, I have already created an API key. I'm just going to paste it here. Then we're going to do dot finish. Error. Response. And now we're going to dispatch. Type. I'm just going to call this get distance metrics. And then my payload will be the response dot body. So let me just pass this up here. And I'll do the same thing here. So now we need to create a handler for action. I'm going to create a function called handle get distance metrics. Just gonna pass in the state and action. I'm going to return update state and I'll have my distance metrics in here. And I'll just set it as action but payload. Okay. So get distance metrics. I'm going to assign it to this handler and save. Okay, so now we need to test if this is working. So I'm just gonna refresh this. I type in an address, select. Oh, one more thing we need to do. I need to close this. The moment I click, I need to close the search box so I can be able to type in my drop-off location. So let's do that. So I have my result types object. I'm just gonna set the pick up to false and the drop off to false also. Set this as false. I'll do the same thing for the drop off. I save this. If I type KLCC, select the address, this thing disappears. Now I can type in another address, select, disappears also. Okay, so in order for us to make API calls, I'm going to need to install super agent. To do that, I'm just gonna do npm install super agent save. And I'll also need to copy this. I've already written this code, so I'm just gonna copy it and create a utilities folder. I'll create a utilities folder inside my source. Inside this folder, I'm just gonna create a file called request.js. I'll paste this code and save. And I'll just import that request from here. Import request from utilities request. Now we'll be able to use the request and the get method. Save this. Let's test. So type in pickup location. Now type in a drop off location. And we have Google distance metrics. And now you can see we have the destination addresses, origin addresses, rows. Inside the rows we have elements and we have an object. So now we know the distance is 18 kilometers and the duration will be 20 minutes. So another thing we need to do, when the user types in the address, we want this title which is here to populate this input field the moment the user clicks the address. So I'm going to need to use the selected address object to do that. So I just need to map it to props here. Stat.home selected address, which could also be an empty object. Then I need to pass it into my search box. So I'm just going to create a constant. I'm going to take the selected pick up and the selected drop off from selected address. So the value for my input box will be, if we have a selected pickup, it will be selected pickup.name. We do the same thing for the drop off. Let's just make this a little bit more readable. We'll do the same thing here. Okay, so we need to pass this as props to the search box. So inside our map container, we want to pass selected address. Put it also here. And we'll have it also inside our home route. Is equals to this dot props dot selected address. So now if I type klcc and click on this field will be filled with the title. If I type Mid Valley, the field will be auto populated with the title I selected. So now we need to calculate the fare. To do that, I've already created a function we're going to use here. So we're going to pass in the base fare that we're going to hard code, the time rate also, the distance rate, and the surcharge. But the time and the distance, we're going to get them from the API. So we're going to convert the distance to kilometers, and we're also going to convert the time to minutes. Then we're going to calculate the price per kilometer by multiplying the time rate times the time in minutes. And we're going to calculate the price per minute by multiplying the distance rate with the distance in kilometers. So the total fare will be we use the formula I showed you at the beginning of this video. So it will be the base fare plus the price per kilometer plus the price per minute multiplied by the surcharge. So let's do that. So I'm just going to copy this, and inside my utilities folder I'm going to create a new file called fare calculator.js. Just paste this code here. So I'm just going to import calculate fare from fare calculator.js and save this. So now we're going to go down here and we're going to calculate the fare just here. I'm just going to put a set timeout for now. Set timeout. Just put it in 1000s. So I'm going to have the same condition that I put here. Just gonna copy this and paste it here. So I'm gonna create a constant called const fare, which will be equal to calculate fare, and I'm going to pass in some numbers. So I'll need the base fare, I'll need the time rate, and I'll also need the surcharge. So to do that, I'm just gonna create a constant here. I'll just call it dummy numbers. It will be an object, the base fare of 0.4, a time rate of 0.14, and the surcharge 1, distance rate 0.97. I'm just gonna pass these parameters to this function. I have dummy numbers dot base fare. So I need to pass in the time rate. Store. Let me just check. LCC. Okay, so it will be store dot home dot distance metrics dot rows. It's an array, so I'm just going to take the first element dot elements dot duration dot value. Okay, and we're also going to pass in the distance rate. And then I'll pass in the distance value. And finally the surcharge. So this should be able to calculate our journey's fare. So after this, we're going to dispatch just do normal Redux stuff. I'm gonna do a dispatch in action called get fare. and my payload will be this fare. I need to put these in my action constants also. So I need to create a handler for the getFare function. I'm just going to create a function down here called function handle getFare. Let me just copy what I have here, save time, and paste it here. So I'm going to return an object called fare, which I'm going to set the action.payload. I need to assign this to my action. Okay. So let's test if it's working. I'm gonna refresh this. Value of undefined. Oh, I left this out here. This is an array also, so I need to take it from here. Save. So you can see now we're getting our fare. And the payload is 15. This will be the price. So the next thing we want to do is we want this fare to be displayed to the user before the user continues on to book. So we're just gonna add a component here which will display the fare. So let's just create a quick component. So inside my home route components, I'm just gonna create a component called fare. Index.js. I'm gonna create the styles also. Fare styles. .js. To save time, I've already created some styles. So I'm just gonna copy this and paste my styles in here. Now I need to create a new component. Just copy this, paste it here. So I need to import React native base. I'll need a view. I don't need this. I don't need this. And I'll need styles from fare styles.js. Now I'm just going to create a component export fare is equal to anonymous function, and we're going to pass our fare object inside here. I'm going to return a view. And I'm going to give it a style goes to styles dot, this will be my container, fare container, and I'll have a text inside here. Inside this text, I need to put in another text element, which I'll give a style. Styles dot fare text. This will be the currency. Fare. And I'll also need to add another text element. Just put this in one line. This time this will be my amount. Just copy this, paste it here. Do I have amount? And inside the amount, I'll just output my fare. Okay, now we need to call this inside our home route. We're only going to display this if we have the fare amount. So I'm just going to do this dot props dot fare. Then we'll display the fare. This dot props dot fare. And of course we need to import this. We need to import the component. Importing it from fare. Save this. We also need to make sure our component knows the fare exists. So we're just going to map it here. Fare stat.home.fare. Save this. One more thing I need to do, I need to export this. This is a constant. I need to export default. I need this in here. Okay, so if I type in KLCC Mid Valley, now I'm getting my fare. So that's it, guys. In the next video we're going to finally communicate with the database. So we're going to add a button here. When the user clicks on the button, our application will insert the booking details into the database. So I hope you enjoyed this video. I'll see you in the next one. Bye bye.